Well, good morning, everybody. Pastor Steve here, and as I say every day, I am so thankful you've joined me for today's devotion. We are beginning our reading of the books of 1st and 2nd Thessalonians in your New Testament. And some of you, I'm sure some of you are wondering, why are we reading these books? We were in Acts, got around chapter 18, so on, and we stopped. Well, during Paul's second missionary journey, which we read about in Acts chapter 16, 17, and 18, he stopped in the city of Thessalonica. That's the church to whom he wrote these two letters, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. And so just as we stopped and read Galatians, because on Paul's first missionary journey, he spent most of his time, he and Barnabas starting churches in Galatia, which was a region, a Roman province, in central to the south part of the central part of modern Turkey. So we read the letter that he later wrote to them. Now, on his second missionary journey, he revisited those churches in Galatia, and he went over into Macedonia and Achaia, which today would be Greece and up above it, and Thessalonica, a city in Macedonia, above Achaia, above modern Greece, part of Greece. Today, he planted a church there. And so these are the letters he wrote. So what we're doing is we're reading Acts, is we're just stopping along the way as Paul goes to some of these cities, and then we're reading the letters that he later wrote to those cities, so you can start getting a fuller picture of what's going on. So that's why we're doing this. And devotionally, what I want to share is just three thoughts from three verses. The first one is in verse 6 of 1 Thessalonians 1, where he says, verse 6, you also became imitators of us. They learned how to live the Christian life from Paul and his team, and of the Lord, having received, and here's the part I want to focus on, having received the word. What's the word? That's the preaching, the teaching, the gospel that was shared with them. Having received the gospel word, so to speak, in much tribulation, with joy in the Holy Spirit. So they heard the gospel and believed, were saved in the midst of persecution, opposition, tribulation, but they had joy, not because of their circumstances, but because of the Holy Spirit. A few weeks ago here at First Baptist, I talked about on Sunday morning the difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is fleeting. Happiness is up and down. Happiness depends on circumstances, but biblical Christian joy is deeply rooted in us because of our relationship with Christ and so on. And so here they were getting saved in the face of opposition and persecution. And we read about that over in the book of Acts in chapter 17. So you can go back to Acts 17, read it, and then, oh, wow, you received the word even though there was opposition. Yes, but they had their joy. The other part, devotionally, that spoke to me is verse 8. The word of the Lord, verse 8, for the word of the Lord has sounded forth from you, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, or Greece, but also in every place your faith toward God has gone forth, so that we have no need to say anything. So here's these people who got saved in the face of opposition, had deeply rooted joy in Jesus and the Holy Spirit, and their reputation spread. People were talking about them because it was so obvious they were saved, so obvious they loved Jesus, so obvious they had joy. Rather than being characterized as people who were mad and angry because of all the opposition, in the face of it, they were characterized as people of joy, and it became a witness for Jesus. Wow. There's a lesson for us Christians in America today when it comes to that. Because I think too many of us are known by people who don't know Jesus, people who are lost, as people who are just mad about everything. Not people who are joyous. And they had joy in the face of opposition and persecution. We can learn from these early Christians, brothers and sisters. One last verse, verse 10. Verse 10, where he says, you abandon, in verse 9, he talks about they abandoned idols and so on and turned to God, the living God. But in verse 10, and to wait for his Son from heaven, looking forward to the second coming, whom he raised from the dead, that is Jesus, who rescues us from the wrath to come. Paul, well, actually the Bible, but Paul in Thessalonians makes it clear that when Jesus comes back, there will be wrath on those who don't know God because they're lost and still in their sin, and they deserve it. Even if they don't think they do, they deserve it. He says here in verse 10, God, because of the Thessalonians' faith in Jesus, God rescues them from that wrath to come when Jesus comes back. Because of your relationship with Jesus, you don't have to have any fear of the wrath of God that is in the future. No fear of the wrath of God that will be present on the day He returns. Because Jesus rescues you, not just from hell, not just from the grave, not just from death, but from the very wrath of God. That's one of the great blessings you enjoy if you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I hope that blesses you. Hey, God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow as we look at chapter 2, 1 Thessalonians.